Hello and welcome to ButterRice Re-Review Chapter 1003 of the One Piece manga. Here we are talking about certain topics that are found in YouTube reviews of One Piece. That's right, we are going to think aloud at a couple of the reviewers' assumptions, appreciate their extra information they provide, and talk about some of the predictions they drop. On top of that, I take the time to really appreciate some of Oda's drawing in this chapter in order to highlight one underappreciated segment of what makes One Piece so special. This section may include such topics as damn, that zoom out perspective was really cool. If you find yourself watching reviews of One Piece on a weekly basis, then this re-review is perfect for you. This episode, our reviewers are Mr.Moji, aka Moji, Sawyer 7H, aka Sawyer, and Grandlinereview, aka GLR. I will be switching reviewers for my source material sporadically and haphazardly. But you will find Sawyer 7H and GLR as some of my most commonly reviews included. Let's get into it. At first, let's talk about extra background information, my personal favorite for why I even watched their reviews. Highlighted by Grandlinereview, we learned that in this chapter it's the first time we see the hybrid form of any mythical Zoan user. He even goes on to highlight that this is a popular fan theory for a long time that mythical Zoan users don't even have a hybrid form. I'm not sure where he's looking or what forum he's on to notice this type of things, but thank you for bringing it up. Sawyer made an interesting comparison between Zoro and Luffy, bringing up a comment made by attackers of Zoro in the battle. The fisherman commented on Zoro's ability to slice through the iron balls fired at him as if they were butter. Sawyer then speaks about Luffy's training in Wudon by attacking an iron wall. The connection alludes to an established limitation in the world of One Piece that in order to be able to attack Kaido, you must be able to cut metal. This extra information is more world building in essence by grounding the reader with limits and borders. The most interesting part of the journey for a reader and the time that Oda has chosen to show us, learning and seeing new things while overcoming adversity. Assumptions I'm hearing from reviewers generally because Big Mom is there, she will fall, be involved in the end of the battle. All three reviewers are guilty of this. Right now, she's pumping up Kaido by being a part of his team, letting him do most of the work, take most of the damage, and get his adrenaline pumping. Carnivore type Azuan fruit users are supposed to be the most vicious type, so he might enter a blood frenzy at some point. I think she will leave when Kato is fully involved in the battle mentally and try to steal Kato's poneglyphs before the Straw Hats get their hands on it, then be a relevant force in the story later on. Why else would Oda have taken so much time to introduce so much of her family? CPO will only observe and report. Because Big News Morgan and Stacy were observing and reporting the whole Cake Island arc. They allude to CPO also just doing that. All three reviewers say that separately and use that logic as ways to talk about other things, like why Wallow is close or will they act as the vanguard force of a. This section, let's talk about predictions made by our reviewers. The first is that Beppo will go Sulon form. Maybe he doesn't know how. Plausible that not every mink can do that. The second one, which is mentioned before, is that Big Mom will fall in battle along with Kaido. I think it's very plausible that she leaves at some point and will return in the story later. The third prediction is that Kaido's hybrid form will absolutely wreck the supernovas and end the third act in tragedy. That was mentioned by Sawyer 1 week after Roger Speight mentioned the act structure last week. The final one is made by Grandlinereview. He suggests that Zoro will gain the ability to power up his other two swords, one of them at least, to cut Kaido. Oden had two swords that could cut Kaido, so why not him? Three scars instead of two. Very exciting to imagine. Oda's artwork Scenes that really pop out to me included seeing the skull at a distance, with a cloud of dust hanging in the air after Kaido's pounding, one horn missing its tip. The transition to the battle below, starting off with a POV from the ground looking at Kaido's dragon form and his attacks hitting the ground around our heroes, then switching the perspective towards the shaking ceiling with rubble falling on top of the battle raging soldiers. Orochi's human head lying on the floor as if no more than a piece of rubble. By following the attacks into the ground, transitioning our perspective from viewing the rubble as ground and as a ceiling again, then trailing us down to the soldiers, really connects the two battles into one area instead of distinct battle zones you will see. Very skillful way to transition our focus as readers for the first time in 3 chapters. Narrative reminder section. As the story gets more complicated and only so much focus can be given towards any given area, Oda likes to occasionally remind us of specific things. These things can help us remain involved in the story as a whole and generally get more excited. In this chapter, we see the following narrative reminders. CPO reminding us that this is a battle for pirates, and CPO aren't pirates. Kaido is a natural disaster, telling us not only how powerful Kaido is, but that he will cause a level of destruction or change Wano's landscape in some way. The floating island will have to come down onto Wano somewhere, maybe the desert. Gear fourth time limit, re-establishing the time limit. That Mugiwara's was the second review I've ever created. Thank you for making this far. Try to keep it a bit shorter than the last episode, between the astral background information, the assumptions of our reviewers in focus, the predictions they made, my appreciation about Oda's artwork, and his narrative reminders. It was a lot of content. One of the amazing things about One Piece. Endless things to consider and endless possibilities to cover. Thank you, and don't forget to check out our reviewers' videos.